Welcome to another episode of the Jarvis Sam Show. I am Jarvis Sam, and this week I got a few things I want to touch on. But before I jump into that, I did want to just mention check out my website, www.jarvissam.com. You'll see all my podcasts there. You'll see some blogs there, and got a lot more stuff coming out. So be on the lookout for some more content and some more things I'll be doing in the very near future. Also, I did want to mention that my reoccurring co-host, Christopher Robinson, he has also launched a podcast, and please go check him out. He has been rocking with us since we began late last year, and he's doing his own thing. He's had a podcast before. It was really good. So I expect nothing but great things. So it's Inspired by Christopher. You can go to his website, inspiredbychristopher.com, and check it out. And he'll have all the information you need there to check out his website and his podcast and everything he has going on. All right. So before I even start with this, I have not been following the George Floyd murder case like I should, right? And first of all, why am I saying it like that? It is the Derek Chauvin murder trial. It is not, but George Floyd is the bigger star, for lack of a better term, in the scenario because of all the change that in the movement that we saw last year. It was because of George. It was because he was the face of it. George Floyd was the face of this social justice movement that we saw. So for my own mental health and mental sanity, I can't get as invested in this one as I have in the past. I can remember back in, I think it was 2012, during the Trayvon Martin murder case, the George Zimmerman trial. I remember thinking like, all right, this is going to be a moment where we're going to see justice being served because, hey, this is all the evidence is there. He killed this kid in cold blood. To me, it's an open and shut case, right? And then I just remember being at my job. I happened to walk through the break room during the time of the verdict, and I was like, whoa. And I remember a coworker looked over at me, and we just kind of looked at each other. And couldn't have been a better coworker I had ran into at the time. It was a Black female, and I knew we knew where each other stood on that issue, and we just looked at each other and nodded, like, "What the hell?" Right? Like, and I just remember the place that put me in mentally at that time, and we're talking, that was almost 10 years ago now, and I've only grown and become more conscious and become more aware of everything that's going on and all the injustices, and it's one of those things that it's just you can't get so invested and know what the outcome is likely to be. I've discovered that these trials they're not to convict, they are to put on trial these, to basically put in a court of law the circumstance that happened, to then go and find that reasonable doubt so this person can get away with it. You got to remember what our country is built on. Our country is built on a constitution that considers Black people 3/5 of a man. So in a trial, that's about how we're tried. We're 3/5 of a man being tried. And then we get the jury of our peers, air quotes, right? And all they need is reasonable doubt, right? And in almost any circumstance, anywhere in the world, on any trial, there's always going to be some reasonable doubt, right? So I just it's difficult for me to as much as I want to be invested in it, as much as I would like to follow it as intently as I possibly can. It's I can't get to that place, right? And it can really mess with you because we just constantly see these things happen and there being no justice, right? We saw what happened with Breonna Taylor's murderer earlier this year, right? They they found him guilty of wanton endangerment or something like that, and something that nobody had even heard of until that moment. How insulting is it that this girl was murdered in the comfort of her own home, well, while being in the comfort of her own home, and they don't convict the guy based on that. It's basically because he shot up the walls, and like it's baffling, the things that the loopholes they try to find when it comes to a black person being murdered, especially a black person being murdered at the hands of the police. We look, we can look further back than Breonna Taylor, than Trayvon Martin, than any of this. We can go back to Biggie and Tupac. Now, they weren't murdered by police officers, but they were murdered. And to this day, there's still nothing. They're still trying to figure out who killed Biggie and Pac. It's because why should we find these murderers when they just eliminated two threats for us, right? Because that's the ultimate thing, is that black people, especially black men, are considered threats in America. We are considered threats in America. And I'm going to circle back to that point a couple times over the next few minutes. But that's why. So as the parts that I've seen of the George Floyd trial, I know that but what I was going to say about that was the trial is not to convict. The trial is to have this reason. It's to basically give an excuse for why this happened. It is to validate why this happened, and for them to say, well, we brought it to trial. The jurors didn't find them guilty. Boom. We paid the family their little money. Hey, we put a price on a black life so people can move on, right? But the justice never happens. This trial is to prove that there is a shadow of a doubt that George Floyd did not die from the knee being on his neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. That's not what it's about. It's about the fact that them trying to make it a fact that he died because he had opioids in his system. That's what they want to prove. They want to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that there's a reason that his death escalated. That's all they want to prove. The nail on the neck, they are trying to justify that to the fullest extent, and they are going to pin this whole thing on him passing away due to the opioids being in his system. So from what I understand, they interviewed his girlfriend, and who was not a part of any of this. But what they wanted to know, they wanted to get her in this vulnerable state so she can begin talking about their opioid abuse, how they got hooked on opioids and how much they're taking. And because again, it's all going to come back to this. There's reasonable doubt because he had this amount of drugs in his system. And they're going to try to divert all that attention back from all the facts that they've laid out. I know they showed footage of George Floyd at the convenience store. He was laughing and talking to the clerks, and he danced a little bit. They said, hey, the brother was probably, under the influence, but he was not a threat. He was coherent. He was joking. He was being very personable. It is what it is. And then he comes out, and they interviewed the gentleman who pretty much witnessed it firsthand. It was an older black gentleman who was trying to tell the police officer, hey man, like, ease up. And he's trying to tell George Floyd, hey man, don't resist, just let them do what they do. You're not going to win. And you can hear George Floyd, hey, I'm not trying to win. You can almost hear in George Floyd's voice, like, hey, I'm just trying to make it out of this situation alive, because the cop has his gun drawn on him already and got him in the squad car. And it's just too much. And it's just like, this is why it's hard for a black man to get so invested in these things and know that there's not going to be a good outcome. It's almost like, I'm a huge sports fan, and sometimes your team is just losing, So it's a little more difficult to get, I'll be transparent. I'm a huge Houston Rockets fan, right? Right now is not a good time to be a Rockets fan. We lost our star players at the beginning of the season. And we have, we got some really good players to kind of build around, and that's exciting. But we have been taking L's left and right, so it's been very hard for me to get engaged in the season, knowing, and I know what the outcome is going to be. I know we're not going to make the playoffs. I know, I'm looking forward to the lottery, the draft, the draft in the off season, because I know there's nothing to look forward to right now. We'll be lucky to win 22, 23 games. So I already know what I'm dealing with. Now, in seasons past, when we had, the top scorer in the league and perennial MVP, hey, it was easy to be invested. And I'm not a fair weather fan. At the end of the day, it's the Rockets. That's why I'm looking forward to the draft, because that's a moment where maybe my team can win, right? So that's what I'm trying to say here. So we know how these things historically, if you look at historical data, this is how it historically turns out. Black man killed, cold blood, unarmed, officer or racist gets acquitted. That's how they turn out. My level of investment can't be so, oh yeah, we got them. And to just know in a couple of weeks what the verdict is likely to be. Now, I I hope and I pray that this is different. I hope and pray that all the coverage that this has gotten, everything that has happened, around, and all the things that have, like I said, George Floyd has been the face of this social justice movement that we saw in 2020, leading through 2021, which we're currently in right now. He's been the face of it. So if the face of this movement doesn't get justice in this trial, come on, are we ever going to get justice? Again, it goes back to what the country is built on. This country was not built to be favorable to Black people, period. Period. We were never built that way. We were brought over here as and to be slaves, treated like freaking animals, working for crumbs, given scraps, and then had to fight for the right to be treated like a human, and then be in a system of a country that is calling us 3/5 of a man. And now we expect to get justice when somebody kills us. There's an image on social media that has George Floyd as the police officer and Derek Chauvin as the suspect with the knee on his neck. Whew. I get fired up when I talk about this stuff because, again, this is why I can't, my mental health needs to breathe a little bit, because as a Black man, you live this. Like, you live this. Like, yeah, I may have not ever had a situation as extreme as George Floyd, but I've been racially profiled. I've been pulled over unjustly. I've been all of these things. Like, I've been almost arrested for something I didn't even know that happened. Like, just because I met the description of a 6'4" Black male. Like, I know what happens. And I know how easily I could be George Floyd with opioids in my system or not. I can be in a convenience store. Somebody says a 6'4" Black male just did a counterfeit $20 bill at the store. Hey, I happened to walk out. I just went in to grab an iced tea. And hey, next thing I know, my family no longer has me. I have to realize, like, that is what Black men deal with on a daily. We always have to think about what we're going to do. Every moment has to be so well thought out, right? As to where others don't have to deal with that. And I'm not here to, every white person ain't bad. Every cop ain't dirty. I'm not here to put that narrative out there. That's not me. I know some amazing white people, right? Um, I know I have a very, very good friend who's a cop, and he's a black man. And I worry about his life on both ends because I know that people hate cops, and I know that black and people hate black people. So I pray for his brother on two ends of the spectrum because I already know what he's up against. So I'm not here to dispel that, but I'm what I'm here for is wanting there to be accountability for those that do wrong by black people. And we have just historically seen that it doesn't happen very often. We actually have really never seen it happen. And that's what's scary. And that's why it's hard for me to just be overly invested in this trial. Let me get off of that soapbox. But um I hope that I'm wrong. I hope that this is the dawning of a new era of justice, of um, the right thing happening. Yes, if the guy if he's on drugs, he needs to see he needs help. Like he needs to go to alcohol, drug rehab, whatever. Doesn't give you the right to take his life. And when when the big the defund the police hashtag and movement kind of started, people, oh, we can't defund the police. And defunding the police is all about reallocating funds and putting those funds to better use. So if there are people that have drug problems, maybe you get a drug rehabilitation specialist, can get that information, and maybe he can be called to the scene to help this young man. Maybe you get people that specialize in homelessness and whatnot to deal with the homeless people and help them. And we just need more of a movement of help. People need help, and it's disheartening that instead of protecting and serving, which is the moniker of the police, is that they're here to protect and serve. They're not. They're not here to protect and serve us. They're not. That's just the facts. They're not here to protect and serve us. They are here to protect and serve the white community, and or protect everybody else from black people. is really what it is. And until we continue to change that narrative, and again, not all police officers are bad. Not all police officers um, are a part of that, which I'm speaking of. But in general, that is the general consensus. You know, like I said, as a black man, we have to do so much just to survive. We have to um, like some companies, say, oh, bring your authentic self to work, and that works for most people. Doesn't work for black people. For some reason, it does not work for black people, right? Because our natural selves can sometimes be, or our authentic selves can sometimes be intimidating. And anytime that we're seen as a threat, they want to eliminate the threat. So, anywho, again, I just really hope that this trial is really a turning point in social justice, just as his death has really awakened this movement that has permeated not just American culture, but has permeated the entire world. Yet the entire world talking about I can't breathe and and whatnot. But none of that means anything if his murderer is not convicted for the crime that he committed. I also saw that they released some footage of the Asian American officer's body cam that showed those people's reaction, that he was holding back. And one of the ladies was a fire department, worked for the fire department, and was like, he needs CPR. And man, those things are just tough. It's just like, man, you got And right there across the street, you saw some blacks, some Hispanics, some whites that were all rallying to like do the right thing. And no. So all these different people could not persuade Derek Chauvin to do the right thing. Think about that. Think about how inhumane he must be to have an older black gentleman telling you, hey, don't do this, to having every walk of life almost imaginable across the street, and they're recording you and they're telling you he can't breathe. They're telling you he needs help. They're telling you he needs CPR. They're telling you he's not resisting. They tell like because it's one thing as a police officer, you have to make a split decision, right? Like at the end of the day, as a police officer, you deserve to go home too. I get that. So it's one thing to make a split decision, but now you have 10, 12 people helping think for you. But you're such an arrogant piece of shit that you can't even listen to the voice of reason. And those are the type of people that should not wear a badge, that do not deserve to wear a badge. One of the things I talked about after this all took place last year is that I also think some of the funds need to go to like figuring out how to reform the police. Like, right. So I think that all existing police officers need to go through a polygraph test, an aggressive polygraph test that asks them the right questions that they have to answer honestly. Some of those questions need to be about, hey, have you ever pulled anybody over because of the color of their skin? Have you ever racially profiled somebody? Have you followed somebody just because of the color of their race? It needs to be very specific, and that will help weed out. And if they fail this polygraph test, they need to be dismissed immediately. No questions asked. Thank you for your service. The police, we don't roll like that no more. Get the hell out of here. You're making us look bad. You're giving us a bad name. Get the hell out of here. Go find a job doing something else. Because that's where accountability will play a major role. When people lose their jobs by being, you're going to have to think twice about becoming a police officer now because of the difficulty it's going to be to even pass the polygraph test, because now the polygraph test for you to get initiated into the police academy and whatnot is going to be different. You're going to have to answer questions about racist tendencies because we can't have anybody with racist tendencies on our force because that's not what we stand for. We're here to serve and protect everybody, not just particular communities. R.I.P. George Floyd, rest in power. Your untimely death has made a mark, and I just pray that it truly makes a mark by bringing justice. This leads me to my next topic. So Piers Morgan made some comments about Meghan Markle, whatever. Piers Morgan and his co-host, who is of some sort of black descent. He's light-skinned brother. But they had some back and forths about the Meghan Markle situation, which is neither here nor there for me. I'm not here to sort out rich royal people issues. Prince Charles knew when he married a black woman that them Brits ain't gonna go for that in some way or some shape, some form. He did what he had to do. Shout out to him for moving away and standing up for what's right for his family. But I'm not here to sort that out. What I'm here for is the way Sharon Osbourne defended him and then so aggressively went at Sheryl Underwood on their show about this issue. And the reason I want to bring this up is because there is just no fear in white people to say whatever the hell they want to say, to do whatever the hell they want to do. I talked about earlier, as a black man, you have to always kind of think about, how will this play out if this happens? Hey, if I go here, what will they think? If I say this, what are they going to say? Is this going to come across as, we have to always be second guessing everything that we do. And a white person can just do it, right? Sharon Osbourne said what she said, and had no remorse, was like, and just talking to Sheryl Underwood crazy. Sheryl Underwood still seemed like, Sheryl Underwood still had to respond in a very tactful way. She knew she had to respond in a tactful way, despite being straight up disrespected on national TV by this woman who's defending racist comments. I'm not here to say Sharon Osbourne's racist or whatever, but the way Sharon Osbourne responded shows privilege, right? Because anybody you respect, you don't talk to like that. Sheryl Underwood was never disrespectful to her, but Sharon Osbourne knows, I'm white. I can say what I want to say, how I want to say it, when I want to say it, on any platform I want to say it on, because I'm white and I'm rich, right? Sheryl Underwood responded very tactfully. She called her, she said, someone I believe is a friend. At that point, I ain't gonna lie to you. There ain't no way I'd refer to that woman as my friend, because friends don't talk to friends like that. And it just was disrespectful. And, I, again, as a black man, I can relate to how white people can think that they can talk to you any kind of way, especially when they think you're in a certain capacity, and that you have, that they kind of have you like you're in a box, right? So if you work in a retail job, you're gonna have white customers come in, and they gonna have an attitude with you, and they gonna come at you how they come at you, right? And that's not right, and you just got to know that they wouldn't come at your white counterpart like that. You know why? Because they respect your white counterpart. They don't respect you. And that's just an everyday struggle that we have. I I worked at a job, and I was the general manager of this little retail shop. Did it for a few years. We were doing a. It was actually during the grand opening of one of the locations, and I had a I had a employee that worked for me. He was an older white gentleman, really nice guy. His job was, he was basically a warehouse guy. He worked in the warehouse. He moved furniture around, and he was like the expert on the furniture. He knew where every piece of furniture was. He was literally the expert on furniture, and I relied on him very heavily to um, keep the warehouse intact, and to help customers when they needed furniture pulled from the back and loaded into their cars. So he typically, wore a t-shirt and an apron and jeans, and he looked like a working man. He would come in with a white t-shirt, and it would, at the end of by the middle of his shift, it's almost brown, because he's been working so hard. And then here I am, the general manager of the building. I had on a shirt, a tie, some slacks, some dress shoes, and the white gentleman was, again, wearing his apron and his dingy t-shirt and everything, working really hard, and so he was actually bringing some uh, furniture out to a customer's vehicle, and it was really heavy. So I stepped in and I helped him, and we loaded into the gentleman's car, and the gentleman goes to my white employee and goes, "You must be the manager." And he chuckles and goes, actually, you're looking at the manager right there. So it's just that stigma is like this white customer dismissed everything, dismissed the fact that, hey, this guy has on an apron and a dingy t-shirt, like he's been working with gloves and all this, and this well-dressed black guy must work for him, but throws all that out the window just because I think they just immediately correlate middle-aged white man would never work for a young black man. It's just not, they can't fathom that. Things like that happen all the time. And that's subtle. The guy wasn't rude to me. The guy wasn't, he just went with the stereotype. He just went with, hey, white guy's in charge, black guy works for him. Like I said, never rude. So it was one of those covert racist kind of things. So it wasn't overt, but it's still just like, man, like, and to this day, I still deal with those issues, right? It like it hasn't changed with time. It doesn't change. I can, walk into a situation and, people, oh, I'm looking for the manager. And I'm like, oh, I guess that couldn't possibly be my black ass. Not possibly be my black ass. I couldn't be in charge of a motherfucking thing because I'm black, right? And I apologize for cussing, but it that's how you feel. And those are the things you want to say. Like, I'm here for this situation. Uh, I'm here to serve you as the person that can resolve the issue. And you're immediately discrediting me based on what you see. I'm well dressed guy. I'm well spoken. You know, I, I don't know what could possibly discredit me, other than the fact that I'm a young black guy. Can't be in charge. He's got to be, you know, he's got to be the guy that pushes carts, or he's got to be, I think over the years I've learned to deal with it better, but it's still never quite. It's still never. It's still that little itch you have, and you're just like, man, one of these days. And I've had circumstances where, um, you know, customer walk up to me and say something, and just start going off for no reason. And I'm just like, I know you would not have responded to a white guy like that. And then sometimes I'll be with some of my white peers, and you see how they interact with the white peers versus how they interact with you. And it's just like, man, it's so much racism out here. And it's so ingrained. And again, sometimes I don't even think people are necessarily trying to be racist in that moment, because again, it's not overt. They're not blatantly calling me a nigger, or like doing something uh to really, that you could really just call out as just like, this is blatant racism. But it's just so ingrained in the culture and the makeup of our country that it just happens just like that. Just snap of a finger, and it's something that's just like, oh my God. But back to the Sheryl Underwood thing. We always feel like we have to think about things before we do them, as to where white people can just go do them. If a black employee at a business called out every time something racist happened, even though it's something that's wrong, covert, overt, if he really gave his true emotion at the time, he'd be without a job, because it just doesn't work that way. We have to be mindful. And I think and this is why I think entrepreneurship and spending money at black owned businesses is so important, because we're not going to be racist towards our own like that. We the more we can build, the more we can get away from having to accept racism as part of just the way it is. Because that's what it is. And sometimes the racism is infuriating. It's just infuriating. Like it's sometimes the covert racism is more infuriating than the overt racism, because hey, the overt racism, is it's there, and you see how a person's feeling and you know what's going on. As to where covert is just like it's just like under the table racism, and it's just like, oh, and it can be so infuriating, and it gets old really, really quickly. And again, the only way we can begin to turn that is, one, not patronizing businesses that allow it as frequently, right? So let's spend money with us. Let's create businesses and spend money with us. That way, white people can be amongst their own people, and they can do what they do, right? And if they decide to come to our black establishments, great, and we're going to welcome them in with open arms, and we're going to treat them like they should be treated, and with respect, and we're going to appreciate the revenue they're bringing to our establishments. But they're not going to come in with the disrespect and talking to us crazy. And that leads me to my next point. Black people have just always been told that, oh, we should just turn the other cheek and we should show grace and this, that, and the third. I'm all about being a nice person. I'm all about, showing grace and whatnot. But I'm not here to show grace to racism, because there's nothing that's graceful about racism. There's nothing that's endearing about racism. There's nothing that is as disrespectful as racism. You're literally being a certain way to a person because of the way that their skin looks. How crazy is that? So I'm I think, and I say this hesitantly because I don't want anybody listening to take this the wrong way and think you should go out and be slapping racist people and stuff like that. No, I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is there is a way that we can handle racism. Racism needs to be called out, and people need to be held accountable and know that they can't just talk to us any kind of way. They can't just handle us any kind of way. So to a certain extent, I think Sheryl Underwood handled herself fine. Because at the end of the day, I know Sheryl Underwood probably wanted to drag Sharon Osbourne all over that set of that View. But that kind of goes back to being stereotypical, and that's the kind of response they expect from us. But under no circumstance should we lay down to racism. Under no circumstance should we allow people to just talk to us any kind of way and just get away with it. Those days are gone. Those days are gone. We are not these people's slaves. And they need to understand that. Racist white people have to understand that they are not, they do not have slaves anymore. If they do, I'm not the guy, right? So maybe you do. Maybe you have some get out situation going on where you got, all these entrapped black people there. I don't know. If that's what you have, cool. More power to you. But this guy right here ain't the one. So you can go, and that's how it needs to be called out. And I think, a lot of people feel a certain type of way about cancel culture. And I do too. Like, I don't think everything should be canceled. I don't think we should be looking for reason to be canceled. But racism needs to be canceled. It needs to be called out. It needs to be canceled. I'm all for that. People do stuff that's racist. They need to be called out for it. They need to be held accountable for their actions. And they need to understand that they need to be the ones thinking twice before they go and do some racist shit. We shouldn't be thinking twice about what we say and what we have to do. They should be thinking twice before they talk to somebody crazy and do something crazy or say something crazy. They should be thinking that. But as long as there's goes back to that word accountability. As long as there's no accountability, as long as black people always turn the other cheek, oh, this master, as long as I don't lose my job, as long as I'm, as long as I get to do this, and nah, call it out. Call it out in a tactful way. Don't get yourself fired. Don't go off on white people at your job just because they looked at you funny. Not saying that. But when there's moments where I urge everybody, if you've not seen that Sheryl Underwood, Sharon Osbourne clip, it's all over YouTube. You can find a YouTube clip of it, and you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about. No one, under any circumstance, has the right to talk to you in that manner, especially when it's already about racism. So go check that Sharon Osbourne thing out and make a decision for yourself. But I'm saying right here and now, we can't be so, the time for all this subservient to white people stuff is not cool. It's not cool. And it's that's, when you talk about white supremacy and white privilege, those are the things that keep white supremacy and white privilege alive and well, is the fact that we allow it, that we don't call it out. I remember going to a upscale Mexican restaurant a few years ago. And it was me and the fam. It was about 12 of us. So that bill was pricey at a restaurant like this. Had appetizers, the whole nine. So, this bill was going to be sizable. Across from us was, two white ladies sipping their margaritas and laughing and joking with the staff and all that. And you just saw the whole staff just, being all up on them and being very servant to them. And then you got this table full of nothing but blacks and Hispanics. First of all, Hispanics, right? Hispanics in a Hispanic establishment with Latin food. The wait staff were Hispanic, and they treated us like second class. Like, oh, they ignored us a lot of the times. We were struggling to get refills, and I don't know. I don't know how many margaritas them people had, but I know they margarita bill and they little enchiladas was not more than that table of 12, 13 people at least $20 a pop. So off rip, just with a 10% gratuity, is going to be more of a tip than you're going to get from these 4 margaritas that these white ladies had. But again, no one wants to elevate anyone but white people. So we're being servant and catering to these white people 100%. When you got your own Latino brothers and sisters at this next table, and blacks at this next table, people of color, people with melanin at this next table, celebrating, having a good time, but you would rather placate and cater to this. Again, those are the things that keep white supremacy alive. The two of them, those 2 white ladies, were more powerful than 12, 13 of us, because this country just holds white people to a higher standard, and everybody else is second class. And then as people of color, we keep that going by keeping it alive, by playing up to these people because, they're probably big tippers and whatnot. Well, you don't know what this, like, give us a chance not to tip you. First of all, give us a chance not to tip you, because I can tell you right now, when I don't get good service at a restaurant, I don't care what you think of me, I am not tipping you well, because I am tipping you based on the level of service that you gave me. I'm already paying for the food. I'm paying you for the experience. As the waiter, you are paid to make sure that establishment is shown up in a good light to the guests of that establishment through your service. And if you're not giving me good service, I'm not giving you a good tip. And I don't care what you think of me. You should have treated me just like you treated that white table. And then maybe I'll consider upping this, because I'll definitely consider it. One of the barometers I score my service off of is my tea. If my iced tea is consistently empty, I know you ain't being attentive to me. I know you're not being attentive to me. Yes, I'm a big guy. I drink a lot. But it is your job to make sure that my tea stays full. I'm not drinking it so fast to where I'm not just taking a swig and it's empty. But yeah, I do get that, and I do have a little grace for them on, hey, if it's busy, hey, but it shouldn't be too long that you walk by this table and you don't see my glass. That should be the first or second thing you looking at. So all I'm saying is, as people of color, we cannot be the ones that help perpetuate the cycle of white supremacy by holding them, because they already have the advantage. We do not need to give them any assists. But they need no assists from people of color with white supremacy, because they have dominated for the last 400 years. All right. We need to come up with tactics to have some sort of black supremacy. It's like, and I'm not saying that, hey, everybody should be. No, I'm saying that we need a dog in the fight. We need to be able to have that same sort of respect, that same type of, we should warrant that same type of energy. But that's all I have for y'all this week. It's one of those rants where I'm real passionate about everything I spoke about today, especially the George Floyd thing. I just want to continue to, whatever you do, whether you pray or, meditate, send that energy, man. We really need that trial to be a turning point in our history of this country, in a good way. So let's just pray for a favorable outcome there. Again, racism. Don't just let it slide. Don't do nothing crazy. Don't slap nobody. Don't hit nobody. Don't cuss nobody out. But think of tactful ways to handle those instances so that there can be some level of accountability, so that people need to think twice before they come at you in a certain type of way. That's it for this week. Again, check me out on jarvissam.com. Follow me on Instagram. That's JarvisSam_ on Instagram. And you can also follow the page for this show, which is the Jarvis Sam Show. Also, go follow Christopher Robinson, my frequent co-host of this show. Go check him out at inspired_by_Christopher on Instagram. Check out his website as well, inspiredbychristopher.com. And I will catch y'all next week with another exciting episode. Thanks for joining me. Fight for justice, fight for what's right, and don't relent on it. That's the biggest message. Don't relent. Like I feel that we finally, 2020 was kind of a turning point for us. I'm hoping the George Floyd trial is another turning point for us, but we've got to keep pressing forward. We had a lot of energy in 2020. We cannot let it die, right? We got to keep it going. I think we've made a little progress. Let's keep the energy going. Let's keep going. Let's keep fighting a good fight. Love everybody. This is not about, whites versus blacks or anything like that. I do, as a black man, want us to have our justice, though, right? So y'all take it easy. God bless.